Hello everybody, GT Cam here with a little bit of an education for you for those of you that don't know the kind of the background on some of this. As some of you have noticed, if you look at Harbor Freight, they're the 1/2-inch drive, low profile sockets come in a tray that's black foam with a blue back, or really it's blue foam with a black top. That's an example of shadow foam, or some people will call it tool control foam. You might hear it referred to as kaizen foam. It tends to go with a concept they call 5S, and I can never remember all 5 of the S's. I usually have to cheat and look it up. But basically it is a method of organization, and I don't remember if it goes back to partly Toyota or not. Be that as it may, it kind of ties into the whole shadow board thing. And for those of you that don't know what a shadow board is, that's essentially a board, and it can be a box where you have cutouts for whatever items, whether that's tools. Gun industry guys have done it for years to make stuff look good. You might see it in a presentation box, stuff like that. Now, what we see a lot in aerospace is stuff like this blue and yellow foam. And guys will hand cut this using, an X-Acto knife, or they make various other knives. Some people use a hot knife. Now, you got pros and cons to this. The biggest con is that it takes up more space. What I've got here is, this was a foam thing for the first gen 120 XP Gearwrench. In this case, I have just put a set of the 90 tooth quick releases in it just to illustrate the point. And what I sometimes see is people will use all black foam or all gray foam or whatever. But when you do that, the problem you have is when something's not in place, you don't have the high contrast. So it doesn't jump out at the eye that something's missing. And that's really the point of it. Excuse me, I freaking leaned over there and lost my balance because I stepped on a cord back here. Anyway, so if you don't have that contrast, it doesn't jump out at you. And we see this a lot more in aerospace than you would in, say, the automotive sector, even though we could argue that probably everybody should have a magnetic, freaking high-vis, it's missing spot for their 10mm, or maybe just have a little dispenser for their 10mm. Just depends on who you are. I lose 14mm. That's kind of how that works. That's mostly at home. We don't deal with metric at work. So the idea is that in aerospace, if you're missing something, you want to know right away. For the people that actually go in and do installation work on aircraft, they take a box in there that's labeled FOD control. And what FOD stands for is foreign object damage or foreign object debris. Something as simple as a pen sitting on the intake of a jet engine can get sucked into that engine and shut that engine down, probably destroying it in the process. It has happened. Bird strikes are a thing too, but that's a whole other story. But if you go onto that plane and you don't bring out what you took on that wasn't installed, it's somewhere in there, and that can get down in a cable, it can rub on something, you can cause a short circuit, you can cause all kinds of damage and havoc in an aircraft. And there are miles and miles of hydraulic lines and electrical and all kinds of stuff in an aircraft. So in the aerospace industry, it's absolutely imperative to keep as much control of that stuff as you can. Nobody wants to be the person that leaves a flashlight in a KC-46 tanker, or that maybe FAA shows up to do an inspection and the first thing they find is a fluorescent Pelican light sitting on the entryway of one of the aircraft. Well, what's this doing here? So that's where we see it a lot, and that's kind of the methodology behind it. You won't see it typically as much in an automotive shop. A lot of guys, they have a lot of stuff. We'll just put it that way. I personally, I've got limited space in my little Craftsman case. I'm looking at doing a 73-inch Icon an 80-inch snap-on eventually, maybe, we'll see. Will it be full from the get-go? God, no. But there's room to grow, and then there's some places for hardware and stuff like that too. So you give up space by doing it this way, but what you get is a very effective organization method. And you can tell at a glance when something's missing. So when you open your drawer, you're like, oh, that's missing. Now, if your background color is kind of the same, say you have a red toolbox and you're using red foam, it may not jump out, it may not click in the head quite the same way, which is where you start getting into, say, high-vis yellow or something. I wish it was brighter, quite honestly. You should see the phone case. It's really yellow. And I did that so I can spot stuff easier. So if you choose to do this, you know, the methodology is simple, and you can buy the different types of foam. Actual kaizen foam is expensive. I'll be the first one to say it. It's ridiculous. And Snap-on's foam, also ridiculous. I like the heck out of it, quite honestly, but yeah, it's ridiculous. I do wish that they would do cut to order so I could actually have like the rows straightened out, so I can just have like a bank of 6 or 9 or whatever. So you can basically trace the stuff out. There's various tutorials out on YouTube and various other places. But so that's the rationale, is you want to be able to see that you're missing stuff at a quick glance, quickly. You know, like in the case of aircraft production, those things are moving down a line. You don't necessarily have a lot of surplus time. So you just want to be really efficient about that, and space is way less of a concern in that case, because what you have in your toolbox is generally the tools to do that specific job that you're doing. If I go through stuff where I'm at, I work more of a fabrication side. You go through, you pull a drawer open, it's like one adjustable wrench, usually a snap-on red handle. There's probably a 6-inch flex rule, or maybe it's a 6-inch rigid rule. Sometimes it's a 12-inch. There might be a pair of dial calipers or digital calipers, usually digital. Occasionally I see dials, but I'm a holdout. I prefer dials. I just absolutely detest the digital ones. I've had enough of them that, you know, they get liquid on them and they start giving you erroneous readings. Not all of them. You have to spend extra money to get the ones that are liquid resistant. So with that in mind, if you want to go the ultra freaking organized route, you're going to give up space. That's just all there is to it. You're not going to be able to make as efficient use of the space. But what you are going to get is easy to find, easy to identify when stuff is missing sort of organization. And you can argue that you can do it with something like a magnetic tool tray, or you can take, like Snap-on does these magnetic tool rows, and we'd have some of these kicking around at work too. But at the end of the day, you know, you'll notice it's the gap, but it won't jump out at you quite as readily. And that's really what it comes down to, is this fluorescent, brightly colored red, blue. Blue is really common. Yellow, this god-awful pale yellow is really common. We've got some red kicking around at work that's kind of cool, but I haven't seen a surplus of that. So that's really where it kind of originates, what it's really good for. If you want to get some and play around with it, people play around with using foam yoga mat, foam tiles from Harbor Freight or whatever craft store. If you don't like the idea of foam and you want something more rigid, something easier to clean, although this has been pretty easy to clean with the, what do they call them, tool wipes, gorilla wipes, whatever it is. That's been pretty cool. But you can take, you can use a piece of wood and a router, pencil out your lines and route it out that way. You could use the HDPE boards, like the cutting board material. I've seen a couple different colors of that. Although that stuff you'd have to screw it together, because I'm only aware of like one adhesive that works on that stuff, and it's 3M and it's expensive. tube was like $75 or $80, and it's a small tube. And that was last I checked, so maybe something's changed since then, but I doubt it. Anyway, just want to give you guys a quick background on that. Snap-on is obviously not the only ones doing it. We've seen Capri does a lot of it. Harbor Freight does a lot of it. Yeah, Harbor Freight, some of their Quinn stuff and a lot of their Icon, well, not a lot, but their Icon mechanic sets, the 3/8 and the quarter that come in the freaking clone of a Pelican looking case. Trying to think of who else. There's a few, oh, and that's another thing. There's a few companies out there that will custom cut stuff for you. Some of them are actually relatively reasonable. I think it's Trace My Space is one of them. Just Google stuff, you'll be able to find it fairly readily. If you wanted to cut your own, you can go on Amazon and find some stuff. There's other companies out of the UK and a couple other parts of the world that also have stuff where you have knives and you have a hot knife and you have like a little hot pad thing for freaking working the foam over. So that's just a couple of ideas, couple things, just throwing that out there for you guys. It became obvious in looking at some of the comments and some of the other channels that a lot of people in the comments didn't necessarily understand the why or the where, and in fairness, a lot probably don't care. It's, you know, just the way it is. Some people are perfectly content just throwing the stuff in a drawer. I've been that person, but as I've gotten older and more experienced, I've hit a point where I open a drawer and it's like, where is that in this drawer? When everything in that drawer is chrome, everything looks the same. And it's in there somewhere. Good luck finding it. Hey, where's that locking extension, you know, with the freaking chrome collar? Oh, it's in there with the other 27 freaking extensions. Oh, that's great. In there somewhere. Behind this camera, there's a box with a selection of my wrenches. Yeah, good luck. I can fish through that until I actually have a chance to open it up and lay it out on the bench and actually sort it again, because as you can see from the walls behind me, I've been working on this workspace. Maybe Harbor Freight will take it upon themselves to be like, hey, we need to send you an Icon box. Hey, a guy can hope. So that should give you guys a rough idea on the background on that. Give you, if you want some more information on it, feel free to chime in the comments. I'll see what I can find for you if I don't already know. Or feel free to Google it. There's a number of tutorials on YouTube. Pretty sure even Trace My Space has something on here. So anyways, with that in mind, I hope you guys have a great day. This is one of my rare nighttime videos. Got home from work, was like, hey, you know what? I feel like shooting that tonight. And there's a Tool Haul Tuesday coming up where I mentioned I was going to do this video, and then I was just struck with the idea. It's like, why don't I just do that now? So here it is. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. GT Cam out. Feel free to like and subscribe.